Hello, welcome to Crux Investor. We caught up earlier today with Garrett Ainsworth, who's the CEO of District Metals. They are after polymetallics in Sweden. So if you want our thoughts and opinions on that conversation, their plans, their recent fundraise, and indeed the company itself, you can find that at cruxinvestor.com/club, where you can also find detailed company reports. There are summaries from experts from around the world on a variety of companies and commodities. There are training videos on there to help you get that bit better at doing your own diligence. There's summaries of other interviews, which may save you a little bit of time. And of course, why don't you join our thriving community of investors sharing their thoughts and ideas with each other in a nice, safe environment. And you can do that at cruxinvestor.com/club. And of course, we love your feedback too. So do give us a like, leave your comments below if you've got some time. And if you want to see what we talked about, take a look at the description below. Garrett, how you doing, sir?
Excellent, Matt. Good to see you again.
Yeah, it's been a while. Sweet. End of July, beginning of August, I think. Have you been keeping well?
Yes. Yeah, very busy, actually. Yeah. Going through data, creating new data, putting it all together, making drill targets, permitting, and getting ready for our Q1 drill program.
Name of the game. And look, I think just for people watching this, when we spoke, you went through your business plan, the strategy, the team, the corporate structure, the financing. So I'll put a link below so people can go to that and hear that kind of backstory. I think today we're going to talk about what you've been doing since then and what's going to be happening Q1 next year. So looking forward to that. Before we do, give us that 1 minute overview for people new to the story, and I'll pick it up from there.
Absolutely. Yeah. So District Metals is a fairly new company. Really, we didn't close on our acquisition of our high-grade polymetallic project until July of this year. It's an advanced stage project, covers 5,100 hectares, 17 kilometers of strike length. We're situated right in between two giant polymetallic mines, one past producing being Falun, the other being Boliden's Garpenberg mine, which is one of the most productive underground zinc mines. But we also discussed that it's also could be classified as a silver mine. So yeah, we've basically been working with some historical data and putting our own more recent data together through SkyTem surveys and ground surveys, and it's all come together quite nicely for our drill program coming up.
Fantastic. I think if copper price keeps going the way it is, you might have to reclassify it as a copper mine soon. Right. Let's talk about what you've been doing since we last spoke, which is let's take it from the beginning of August, if you don't mind. So what have you achieved since then?
So I believe we put more news out on Gord's Gruven, historical drill results, and really that's in the southern part of the historic Tom Keebo mine, which is where we're going to be focusing our drilling. There's some very significant historic drill intercepts with high-grade copper. They were only assayed for copper, but we know it also comes from the dump piles. So that's a very important thing to note. So when we go back, we'll be drilling and analyzing for all the metals that are associated with that. But what that area really shows us, and very importantly, is that there's been a very strong and long-lasting feeder zone at the historic Tom Keebo mine, and that's an essential component to these very large polymetallic deposits that are being mined in the Bergslagen today. And so we have it on our property, and it's our number one target area right now.
Okay, so but just if you don't mind, so characterize how you spent your time, money, and effort since August through to today when we're talking. There's a few things I want to talk about. You're in the middle of a race. Okay, and I do want to talk about that because that's going to enable your drill program in Q1 that you outlined to me last time. So but what's the groundwork that you've been laying down since August to now, if you don't mind?
Yeah. So the other components, we brought in a local expert in the region by the name of Rodney Allen. He went into the field with some other geologists, did some mapping, sampling, and prospecting. That work was done in September, October. They went up, looked at some of the historical drill core that was available, sampled it, did a whole rock analysis. They're actually in the process right now still of doing a full interpretation of that data. We've seen some preliminary work, and it's amazing.
Why? Why do you say that? Amazing. In how way?
So the background on Rodney Allen is that he was consulting for and then was working full time for Boliden at Garpenberg in the 1990s. So he was brought in when they were considering closing Garpenberg. And so he came in with a crew and they did some structural studies, and they basically unlocked the code at Garpenberg and took it from near closure to now a tier 1 asset for Boliden. So what he's identified on our project is, there's a lot of similarities to what you see at Garpenberg and other deposits in the Bergslagen, which, really, really justify a very strong target.
But meaning what? Because Boliden ended up spending about $400 million on that thing. So when you say there's similarities, in what way are there similarities?
So the controls on the mineralization and the styles of mineralization, the different kind of geology structure that's all being observed there is very analogous to what you see at Garpenberg. So that's absolutely key. I mean, we've been working off of Garpenberg like it's an analogy, and we're really getting good confirmation on that now.
Okay, and says the guy who actually did the work back then. So he's telling you with some degree of confidence from his experience that you've got something similar.
Yes. And it's helpful that I'm a geologist, so I can, it passes my sniff test, even though I'm not an expert in the Bergslagen, but I know what's right and wrong from a geological or technical side.
Right. Okay. So how much you had a bit of money when we spoke in July. You've kind of, I guess, worked your way through that. You're in the process of raising some capital now. Now, I just need to remind people, you have a big institutional following. Retail was only about 10, 11%. What's it going to look like after this raise?
So some of the existing funds that were in it, Russo Asset Management, Commodity Capital, Sprott US, Stevens Company, and there's a few others, Bridgeport Capital. We've got about 4 or 5 more very serious funds coming in through this financing. I probably won't name them right now because we haven't closed, but they've locked their order in, and we closed our financing on Monday at 6 a.m. So it really just strengthens again the shareholder registry. A number of high net worths have come in, and it really opened my eyes to who our existing shareholders are based on all the emails and inbound calls that I got, and who wants to come in as a shareholder. So it was a really good experience.
So you closed that book Monday. It's interesting when you name that. It says to me, this is serious. People are looking at a serious business here. It's not a promote. It's not a broker promoted asset into retail. So did you have to have conversations with each of those companies? And if so, what was the bit that they liked about this? What were they buying into?
Well, the main points that I discussed with all the funds and whatnot are the jurisdiction, and quite a few of the people I talked to were familiar with it. Obviously, the technical prowess of the Bergslagen for housing these gigantic polymetallic deposits, the advanced stage of the project, and for myself, it's really important to be in a region where there's a possibility of getting a monetizing event, and that requires healthy mining company, like major mining companies. And you see that with Boliden, you see that with Lundin. They're both in the district. They're financially very well off. If something of significance, gets discovered, I would say the baseline would be about 10 million tons at grades that are similar to Garpenberg. Then, there's something that could happen there.
So just again, remind us what the grades are, because I did have a look. They quite exceptional in places.
Yeah, just off the top of my head, Garpenberg has produced 54 million tons. Grades there, 134 grams per ton silver, 4.9% zinc, I think 2.5% lead, 0.4 grams per ton gold, 0.1% copper. And that really is important, Matt, that you incorporate all the metal content, because that's really what makes up the value of the rock. And the two at the forefront are silver and zinc, but there's definite value that comes from the other metals as well.
Okay, so let's talk about this money. So what's the quantum? Like the release talks about 4.5. Are you going to settle on 4.5?
There may be an over allotment, so to that 4.5, okay. But it'll be pretty close to it.
We'll know more at the end of the month when you close.
Yes.
Fantastic. Yeah. Okay. So what are you going to do with it? Because when we talked, you talked about drilling, and I think most people are going to get a bit more excited than the geophysics or the sampling at surface, etc. when you start drilling. So what's the plan?
Yeah. So at this stage, I've been wanting to drill this project for a year. I'm just so excited to finally be getting there. So yeah, we're fully financed. The plan is to do a 5,000 meter drill program to commence in February, March of next year. And, when we did our raise actually in June of this year, the two reasons that I got from people who didn't participate were you're not close enough to drilling, or, base metals isn't going to do anything for about 2 years. And here we are, 6 months later, and both those boxes are now completely ticked. So we're entering a really good stage to be drilling a polymetallic project in Sweden.
Right. But tell me again, it comes back to the work that you've been doing up until this point. What are the targets? How many targets? How shallow? How deep? What do you know?
Yeah. So I mentioned it's a 17 kilometer strike length, and we've got a huge amount of regional targets and also some of the other historic mines along that trend. But our main focus for this initial drill program is going to be the historic Tom Thiebaud mine. And it covers about a kilometer of strike of mineralization. The mine workings or the exploration drift is on the 200 meter level. And we're using a lot of that historic data to help guide our drilling. But some of our targets are as shallow as 40 meters down. And then, we'll be looking to drill as deep as 300 meters. So going below that 200 meter exploration drift. And that's in areas where most of the drilling they did off that drift was horizontal and shows very significant polymetallic mineralization, wide and high grade, that's open, completely open at depth. And something that we will be doing, which is a common theme, it'll be the first time that this has ever been done on the project. After we drill holes, we will do a downhole EM survey. And this is absolutely crucial. You basically pull all the rods out and you put this probe down, and you have a loop at surface, and you're able to basically map out or delineate the conductive bodies, down at depth up to about 200 meters away from the drill hole. And this was never used. And it's a very commonly used, and successful exploration method used in many other districts. It wasn't used at Garpenberg until the 1990s, and it played a large part in again taking Garpenberg from near closure to being a tier 1 asset. So it's that understanding that we have now that wasn't there in the 1970s when they were developing the Tom Thiebaud mine, which is our huge advantage right now.
So what else have you picked up from the Garpenberg experience? I guess the latter stages of that experience, which is going to save you time and money, identifying the way you should approach your asset at Tom Thiebaud.
The key thing is, making sure that you get knowledgeable people into it. And that's exactly what we have with Rodney Allen. Also another geologist by the name of Hein Rat has 8 years experience with Boliden, 4 of them being in the Bergslagen. And then applying, like, our whole game plan was, we're coming into an old district that has not seen modern exploration, so let's just do it. And another example, actually, that something that was never done on our project, ground gravity survey. It's a pretty basic, cheap exploration method that we've just employed at Tom Thiebaud. And it's very effective in VMS districts, or massive sulfide districts, because the country rock is a lower density than the massive sulfides. So it shows the massive sulfides as a gravity high. And that was never done on the property. So that goes with the SkyTem survey, the deep penetrating SkyTem survey, the gravity survey, and the downhole EM. And that's what we're all putting into the project to be successful.
Okay, so how much does 5,000 meters cost?
1.5 million. So it's $300 Canadian all in. It's pretty good. A large part of that is because the infrastructure is so amazing in that part of the world. And then to do the downhole EM survey, another 200,000. So call it 1.7 million to do 5,000 meters of drilling.
Right.
So we raised a little bit more so that we can pivot and increase the drilling meterage if we see fit.
Okay, so that's interesting. Then, so what does 1.7 million bucks need to look like in terms of the data that you gather to give you confidence to, one, spend a bit more money, or two, possibly even go and raise some more money?
Yeah. So, I mean, some of the holes will be basically testing or twinning historical holes that are missing data. There's quite a few holes, like I mentioned, at Gord's Grooven, where they only have the copper assay results. So we'll be going back into some of those holes and then stepping out on 50-meter centers. And that in this kind of environment should get us towards, head us in the right direction towards doing a mineral resource estimate. And then we'll be doing some fairly significant step downs. And, it's all like whether we increase the budget or not is all, results dependent.
Okay. So to do that, you're going to need a permit or permits. How are you getting along with that?
Yes, I've been talking to a lot of people about the permitting process. I should mention Zinkgruvan mine, which is run by Lundin. It actually has a town on top of the mine. So it is a very, well understood in the region that mines and people work together. And, we started our initial community outreach in November, and the response was very positive. Actually, one fellow who owns quite a swath of land, farming land around the historic Tom Thibault mine, mentioned that he worked at the mine in the 1970s, as part of the development of it. So he's very excited to be, see things happening again. And it's to their advantage. So the government set it up that any material that gets mined beneath their property, they will receive a 0.15% NSR. So, and that's, quite good. I think, the chances are they could, depending on the conditions or whatnot, that could be a lot more profitable than hay or some other agricultural product.
You're going to have both.
So, yeah, so we kicked off our officially by submitting our drill application on December 4th. It's about a 4 to 6 week process. And obviously there's going to be a slowdown with Christmas and everything, but I'd say as it looks now, we're in good shape for starting in mid to late February, perhaps in March.
Right. And so we know that there's an infrastructure because there's the historic mining that's gone on there. People are used to it. But how long do you have to wait to actually get drill crews in place, to get equipment out there? Things like that. I mean, what's the operational constraints that you're working under? Assays, for instance, etc.
Yep. Okay. Yeah. So for the drill contractor, I'm actually really happy that a contractor that I'm very familiar with just happens to be in country, and it looks like we're going to go with them. So that's very positive and makes me feel very comfortable. Yeah. So they're basically have given the nod that they'll be ready to go when our permits are good. When we get going, I would say we would send our core samples out in batches, probably start a month after we start drilling. So the logistics of it is it would get shipped up to, there's a ALS geochemistry lab up in Malå, which is in northern Sweden. That's the prep lab. And then once they prep it, they ship it to Ireland to get analyzed. So that would probably be about a 6-week process. So from the beginning of the drill program, we can kind of look at 10 weeks to get to assays, and then give it a plus or minus a few weeks and for processing it and then putting a news release out on it. Okay.
So it's not too long. We've seen sort of longer timelines than that than for it in Australia and South America at the moment. That's interesting. So in terms of preparatory work, you think you've ticked all the boxes. You're ready to go. You've got a contractor who says they'll be ready when you're ready. Okay, exciting times. Then what is the plan for next year apart from that? So we're pretty much talking around Q1 at the moment. If all goes well, you talked about you're not a mine builder. You'll take it through the feasibility study. That's where you're kind of comfortable. But you're still a long way from that. So what's the plan for the rest of next year?
Yeah. So, I mean, given that we have drilling success in the new year, I could see us going from 5,000 to 10,000 meters of drilling pretty quickly. If we see an area where we can, start building a 43-101 resource, we will go for it, and we will be going down dip very aggressively. If things start blowing out at depth, then I could see us bringing in directional drilling, which is what I'm very familiar with. We used it when I was at NextGen. That's where I initially got my experience with it. It's a very effective method. So that's just for the historic Tom Thiebaud mine. Outside of that, we have a lot of ground that needs to be followed up on. So a lot of the SkyTem anomalies, the conductive anomalies, magnetic anomalies, they need to be followed up on. So we'll do some ground truthing, and and we'll be basically prioritizing them like even more so by having visuals in the field. There's also the Lobass mine, which is on the northeast end of the project. And we're working right now on getting the historical drill data for it. We have all the mine plans and sections, and it shows mineralization's open along strike and at depth. But we understand that there's actual historical drill data available for it. So again, we'll take that, we'll bring it into we'll digitize it, bring it into Leapfrog, and then generate drill targets. So it's like another Tom Thiebaud mine in the pipeline. So being more advanced, and then we've got all these other exploration targets. So when I say the geophysical anomalies, there's about 7 high priority, and then about I think it was 18 medium priority. So there's a lot of work on the ground to really follow up on those. And I could see us doing some more ground gravity surveys as well, because it is a very effective method. In the Iberian Pyrite Belt, it is absolutely like put a bullseye over top of some of these, VMS deposits there.
So talk me through the strategy of getting noticed. You're coming on shows like us, waving your arm, saying we're around, we've started a process, it's going to be great, brilliant. But you're so heavily institutionally invested in, right? Because people like the robustness of your process, but at the same time that causes problems with liquidity, and that's the kind of thing that drives the price. So there's about 10, 11% available to retail. So how do you manage that? Are you going to do a series of small raises to let a bit more retail in, or have you got a different way of approaching this?
Yes, that's right. We raised the liquidity issue when we talked in July, and I mentioned, it'll probably liquidity will increase when our financing becomes free trading, and that's exactly what happened in October. I was really happy that the share price it didn't really come off too much, which speaks to the quality of who's involved and the support that was waiting to pick up the extra shares. So on this financing, there are some very loyal retail shareholders that have come in. So it's not just funds, not just institutions that are participating. And I think liquidity, we're going to trade a lot more liquid after December 30th.
Okay. I guess we'll have to wait and see. Is there a 4-month hold on that?
Correct. Yeah.
So we'll be looking around April, a bit more free trading stock in the market.
The timing's really good. I mean, for the 4-month hold to come off, we'll be well into drilling at that point. Results will be out or very close to being out. So it's the ideal scenario. And it's also, one of the reasons why we decided, okay, we'll do a half warrant. I mean, I really like having the clean slate of no warrants, but if the results are as successful as I think they will be, then it'll be a self financing mechanism in the best of ways.
Okay. Well, Gary, I'm excited for you guys because you've kind of been very systematic and professional with regards to the process. You've now got to go and start doing stuff with the money that you've raised it. I look forward to that. Stay in touch and let us know how you get on, please, because I'm intrigued about what the drill results show. If it is something like Boliden, that's going to get the market excited for sure.
Great. Well, thanks very much for the opportunity and having District Metals on the show. It's going to be a really exciting 2021. We can look forward to some good news flow even in January. We'll be bringing on some, on a formal kind of way, bringing on some good technical personnel. Also, we'll have results on our ground gravity survey that's at the Tom Keebough mine and some more insight to the geological interpretations that I mentioned that Rodney Allen is putting together. So it's definitely not going to be a quiet January or February, and really looking forward to getting going. Have a Merry Christmas and a good break, because I think it's going to be a very busy one for you as well.